Hello everyone and welcome to my presentation. My name is Emma Meyer and I'm going to be talking to you a little bit today about just some different reading strategies that can be used in the classroom. We're going to talk about um, phonemic awareness and phonetic parts of speech and the science of reading, and just again some tools that's going to help y'all in the classroom. So let's get started. First, I want to talk a little bit about the science of reading and like what it is and why it's important. So, first, what is the science of reading? The science of reading is how and why we read. It is the evidence-based strategies we use in our classroom to teach children. Um, it's not just phonics or phonetic parts of reading, it's the fluency and vocabulary skills that students need to build in order to read as well. So as teachers, we should be only using these strategies that are evidence-based and found in research to teach our students. And that is the basis of the science of reading. It is important. My second bullet point is why is it important? It's important because it identifies the key details on how we as teachers can clearly teach our students to read. It gives research-based strategies on how we can break down different reading parts and show students the best methods according to research evidence to gain the tools to read to their best potential. So to break it apart, there are 5 essential reading elements. Okay, so first we have phonics. Phonics is actually my second bullet point there, I guess. Phonemic awareness, then phonics. We also have fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. So we're going to be discussing each of these 5 in greater detail on my later slides. But first I want to give you kind of an overview of what each of these parts are. So the first one that I have listed is phonemic awareness. So phonemic awareness is being able to identify the sounds in a word. So it's also being able to blend sounds together. An example that I have is if we were to say the word cat, for example, you're going to ask the student what the sound is in that word. Or sorry, you would ask them what the first sound is in that word, and they would say the k sound. So, yeah, or for example, this is another example. If you were to ask a student to say the word play, you would expect them to know that pull is a blend and they should read it as such. So they wouldn't say pull, they would say pull for the word play. Phonics is the second bullet point. Phonics is the relationship between the sounds we hear and the letters that we use in the alphabet that represent the sound we hear. For example, we see a letter A in the alphabet, but phonics tells us that it makes the short A sound and the long A sound. So it makes the A sound and the A sound. It also makes the schwa makes it sound like a U. But fluency is the ability to read with ease and accuracy. So, for example, if I were working with a student who is struggling to read, I would look for their ability to read a section smoothly. So that would be without long pauses and with vocal expression. So I'd be looking for vocal expression, and I'd be looking for the ability to read without pausing for a really long time. The fourth bullet point that I have is vocabulary. And this is the words spoken and whether or not they can understand those words when they are put into a sentence. The last bullet point is comprehension, and this is the ability to understand what you are reading. So your gauging students' comprehension can look like asking them to read a passage, and then asking them what that passage is talking about. If they can summarize it in their own words, then they're comprehending what they're reading. So that is the science of reading in the broad overview. So let's get into phonemic awareness. All right, so on this slide, we're going to be talking about phonemic awareness. And I already talked about what phonemic awareness is, but just to review, it's being able to identify the sound in a word. So the first strategy that I have on here for identifying phoneme sounds is phoneme isolation. And this is something that you would do with your students. I would do it one-on-one. But you're asking them to hear and isolate a sound. So if I were to use the word cat, which I already used in the slide above, I would ask them to identify, I would say the word cat to them, and I would then ask them to identify the beginning, middle, and end sound of that word. So I would say the word cat, and then I would ask them to say k, a, t, by asking them what's the beginning sound. I would expect them to say k, for example. The second strategy that I have is blending phonemes. So this is a strategy that in this strategy, I would ask the students to, I would first make the sounds in the word cat. And then I would ask that student to blend them back together. So I would start by saying k, a, t, and then they would give me the word in response. So that's blending the phonemes. Then segmenting. This one's a little bit more tricky. In this one, I'm going to say the whole word, and then the students need to segment the word into individual phonemes. So I'm not offering them what's the beginning sound, what's the middle sound, and what's the end sound, because that's isolating, but I'm asking them to segment. So if I were to give them the word cat, they would need to segment the sounds. So they're offering me k, a, t, and that's segmenting phonemes. All right, next we have phonics. Again, phonics is the relationship between the sounds we hear and the letters that we use in the alphabet. So, for example, I used it above too, but if we see a letter A, we don't just know that that's a letter A. We do know it's a letter A, but we also know that it says the sound A, and it says the sound A. It also says the schwa sound Okay, 3 strategies that we can use. The first strategy that I have listed is practicing nonsense words. This can be a great strategy, and it's very common to do with students, especially when they're learning their phonics and their letters. It just allows them to practice sounds because you wouldn't normally see them. So it really makes them think about the sounds and about every letter of the alphabet. Something else that I have listed, the second thing, is focusing on a few letters at a time. So not focusing on the whole alphabet or all of the phonics sounds that we have, but just focusing on a few letters at a time. This can help them really learn those sounds. And then the last one I have is using visual aids such as pictures or props. This gives them a really good visual for what sounds they're looking for in a word. All right, fluency. Fluency is the ability to read with ease and accuracy. So if I were working with a student who is struggling to read, I would look for their ability to be able to read a section smoothly. So by smoothly, I mean without long pauses and that they are using vocal expression. So they're not just saying things monotone, they're saying it with vocal expression. Okay, the first strategy that I have listed on here is repeated reading. So this is reading a passage over and over and over again until they read with ease. The second strategy is echo reading. So I would read a passage, they would repeat it back to me. This just helps them hear the words and then they say the words. The third strategy I have on there is choral reading. So that would be if I had a whole group of students, or if it was just me and another student, we would read the same passage together. So we would take the paragraph or the whole passage or whatever you're working with, and then you are reading it all together at the exact same time. So it sounds like a chorus, but we're not singing it, we're saying it. All right. Vocabulary. So these are the words that are spoken in a sentence, and we are assessing whether or not they can understand what those words mean when they're put into a sentence. So I have three more strategies of what we can do to help build vocabulary with our students. The first strategy that I have listed is vocabulary journals. So this would be having students keep a journal at their desk, and you every time we would have new vocabulary words that we're learning, it might be in our lesson, in our unit, or whatever, um, we would have them write that word down and what it means, and this just helps reinforce the vocab that we're learning that week. The second strategy I have is encouraging reading comprehension. So this would be, for example, if your school uses AR books, this would just be having them read over and over again, or just different books, um, to help build different vocabulary terminology that they maybe wouldn't necessarily have in their vocabulary already. Um, Third strategy that I have is making word cards. So, for example, if you have a list of vocab words that you have for that week, encourage them to make their own word cards, or assign that as a task to um, write the vocabulary term on one side and then put the definition of the term on the back, and have them flip through it once every day, or yeah, every class period that you have them during that day, or something like that. That just helps reinforce vocabulary terms and helps them learn those terms. All right, comprehension. Comprehension is the ability to understand what you are reading. So you're gauging what the students are understanding when they're reading a passage. The first strategy that I have for gauging whether or not they understand what they are reading is you're going to go back and ask them what they just read. You're going to ask them to summarize what they just read, I should say, after you read a passage. So you're going to have them read something, and then you're going to ask them, okay, in your own words, summarize what you just read. So that's the first strategy. Second strategy is questioning. So you're going to ask the readers questions before, during, and after the passage about the passage. And then predicting. So this is after you read the passage, you're going to ask them to predict what might come next. So, for example, if you have a decodable reader, um, you would read the first chapter and then ask them, okay, what do you think is going to come next? What do you think is going to happen in chapter 2? So those are my three strategies for comprehension. All right, the 5-block reading and writing essentials model. This is a model that can be used in your own classroom. It is 180 minutes of uninterrupted time, or if you are teaching in grades K through 3, you're using 90 minutes. On this slide, I wrote the model for 180 minutes, so you would shorten every category by half if you were going to do a 90-minute model for your younger students. So the first 30 minutes is going to be writing activities. Your second 30 minutes is going to be fluency activities, so practice rereading the passages. The third category is devoted to comprehension, which I explained above in the above slides, and your fourth category is going to be devoted to word work. And then for the last hour, if you're doing older students again, you're going to do differentiated activities. So you're going to have your students split up into different groups by ability, and you're going to have them practice reading instruction specifically. So this is a model that is proven to be very effective by researchers, and why it falls under the category of the science of reading.